So in this video, I would like to explain impersonal and special constructions with object pronouns in the genitive case in Russian. Before immediately explaining the subject matter, it is important that I first remind what I covered in the previous video. In the previous video, I covered object pronouns in Russian that can be used in the 6 Russian cases. Even though there was a lot of information, there is still a lot more to know, because in this video, I'll explain the remaining fundamentals of object pronouns and how they relate to the genitive. It was very significant to show object pronouns and cover only the main functions of each Russian case before explaining every single aspect of object pronouns in the 6 cases. In my first videos about Russian, I explained the grammatical ideas of each Russian case, like when and how to use it. However, the smaller concepts of each case are something that I did not cover, and I did it on purpose because to fully understand them, you first need to understand object pronouns in Russian. Aside from direct and indirect object pronouns, which I already explained, in this video, I'll explain the genitive case more specifically to show how object pronouns must be used in it. These are the main concepts that I showed in my first video about the genitive, but I never fully explained them. Now, I can finally explain them because these concepts utilize object pronouns. As a reminder, the genitive answers the questions of from what and of from whom, and its main functions are absence, attribution, and possession, which are basically the same thing. A very vital topic that I said in the previous video was possessive constructions. A possessive construction in Russian is an idea that relates to possession, which is a way of saying to have. Because the genitive works with possession, it is no wonder why possessive constructions are related to the genitive. Anyhow, you should always know that Russian doesn't construct to have like in English. Russian doesn't have the verb to have like in English, but it doesn't mean that the construction doesn't exist. To show that someone possesses something in Russian, we have to use the words u, meaning by, and есть, meaning there is or simply is. There is no exact way to translate this concept into English, but generally, it's simpler to understand using basic sentences. In this case, a pronoun following the word u is used in the genitive, and the word есть follows the pronoun. Here are some examples. У меня есть собака. У тебя есть собака. У него есть собака. У нее есть собака. У нас есть собака. У вас есть собака. And у них есть собака. Don't forget that the consonant N is placed in the on, ona, and oni pronouns when there is a preposition before. Now, generally, there isn't a big difference between the grammar in English and Russian. In English, have stays have in every pronoun except in he and she. Additionally, the construction u in Russian can work with any noun in any case without any changes. The noun can be masculine, feminine, neuter, or plural, and the construction will not change because it's impersonal. However, just by looking at the phrases in Russian, it doesn't make sense that these are the translations, because in English, we have the personal subjects, the verb, and then an object. In Russian, we have the construction u, an object pronoun in the genitive, another construction есть, and then an object. So in other words, the way of expressing possession is visually and meaningfully not the same as in English. The true meaning behind possessive constructions is that they don't necessarily mean to have in Russian. More or less, they all mean, by me, you, him, her, us, y'all, and them, there is a dog. This is a more logical explanation than simply saying, I have, you have, and so on. That's the true meaning behind possessive constructions in Russian. Now, of course, nobody speaks like that in English, so it has to be translated in a far more conversational manner. I have a dog. У меня есть собака. By me, there is a dog. This is the first and main function of the genitive, which is very important to understand, and the same concept can be expressed with literally any noun or pronoun. The second function of the genitive is the concept of absence or denial, which can be connected to the concept of possession. However, what's important to know about denial in the genitive is that it's only used to modify nouns and pronouns that are directly absent, showing that someone doesn't have something or indicating what or who is missing, using the genitive endings. For instance, the sentence I have a dog, у меня есть собака, is written in a way where the subject, собака, is unmodified because there is a form of possession. However, if I say I do not have a dog, then the sentence expresses absence and denies that I have a dog, which uses the singular form of a feminine noun in the genitive. У меня нет собаки. In this case, we're using the possessive construction by me, which shows that there is no dog. The noun собака is in the genitive and shows that the dog is the absent object. The same concept can be made with any noun and any quantity, like у меня нет кота, у меня нет окна, and у меня нет котов, собак, окон. Кот is the masculine noun, and because it's absent, it's in the genitive masculine singular. Окно is a neuter noun, and because it's absent, it's in the genitive neuter singular. The nouns in the plural all take form in the genitive plural, under the correct genders. Because this lesson mainly focuses on object pronouns, we can replace the nouns with pronouns and say у меня нет его, у меня нет ее, and у меня нет их. I don't have him or it, I don't have her, and I don't have them. The object pronouns can refer to people, places, things, or ideas, because they all replace nouns with pronouns. Still, the true meaning would be, by me, none is of him, it, her, or them. Of course, nobody speaks like this, so it has to be translated into I don't have him, it, her, or them. Furthermore, the Russian word нет means no, but it can also mean there is not. These meanings are very similar because they indicate that there isn't anything at all, showing absence when it's used with something or someone. A very good example of that can be меня нет здесь, тебя нет здесь, его нет здесь, ее нет здесь, нас нет здесь, вас нет здесь, and их нет здесь. These sentences don't necessarily mean I am not here, you are not here, he's not here. Their true meaning is something like of me, none is here, of you, none is here, of him, none is here, and so on. Anyhow, this is how possessive constructions and the concept of absence work in the genitive. And if I had to choose, I would say that possessive constructions, like у меня, are by far the most useful. Essentially, these are not the only uses of the genitive. In my first video about the genitive, I included other functions of the genitive, like description, time, quantitative determiners, cardinal numbers, location, and special prepositions. Because the emphasis of this video is on object pronouns in the genitive, I will not cover all of these concepts, because it's impossible to use object pronouns with some of them, and also because I already explained them. Description, time, and quantitative determiners are concepts that I touched upon, so there is no point in covering them again. However, now we can look at cardinal numbers, location, and special prepositions more specifically. Cardinal numbers are numbers that denote a quantity, such as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. In Russian, these numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. The genitive case is used for the singular form of 2, 3, and 4, and the plural form for 5 onward. The reason why cardinal numbers are vital in the genitive is because they are connected to possession and absence. It is possible to use denial with possession and cardinal numbers with denial and possession. But first, a small reminder of the numbers is needed. Let's use the following masculine, feminine, neuter, and plural nouns. Один, стол, одна, собака, and одно, окно. In this case, the written numbers also change to fit the gender of the nouns. Now, let's write them in 2, 3, and 4. 2, 3, 4 стола, 2, 3, 4 собаки, 2, 3, 4 окна. In this case, the nouns all take the singular genitive form under the correct genders. The only difference is that in the feminine noun, собака, 2 changes to 2, and it's a simple spelling rule. Now, let's write them in 5 onward. 5 столов, 5 собак, and 5 окон. In this case, the nouns all take the plural genitive form under the correct genders, and окно has a minor spelling change. Now that I've shown how cardinal numbers work in Russian, we can put them in the possessive construction, and their forms will be the same. У меня есть один стол. У меня есть 2 стола. У меня есть 3 стола. У меня есть 4 стола. And у меня есть 5 столов. We're using the possessive construction у меня есть along with the corresponding numbers of the noun stol. Now, we can do the same thing, but with a feminine noun, like у меня есть одна собака. У меня есть 2 собаки. У меня есть 3 собаки. У меня есть 4 собаки. And у меня есть 5 собак. The corresponding numbers perfectly match the feminine noun собака in the genitive. Now, let's do the same thing, but with a neuter noun. У меня есть одно окно. У меня есть 2 окна. У меня есть 3 окна. У меня есть 4 окна. And у меня есть 5 окон. The corresponding numbers perfectly match the neuter noun окно in the genitive. Now, we can take all of these phrases and apply them to the concept of denial. У меня нет стола. У меня нет собаки. And у меня нет окна. The nouns are put in the singular genitive under the correct genders, and in the plural, they'll look like this. У меня нет столов. У меня нет собак. And у меня нет окон. The nouns are put in the plural genitive under the correct genders. This is how cardinal numbers work in the genitive. Now, let's move on to location. Location is possibly the easiest concept in the genitive because it typically works when the location is at someone's workplace, and it also uses the possessive construction у. Я у доктора. I am at the doctor's. Я у университета. I am at the university. Я у школы. I am at the school. And я у больницы. I am at the hospital. The following nouns are all in the genitive singular under the correct genders, but the nouns can also be object pronouns, like у меня есть Адам, у тебя есть Адам, у него есть Адам, у нее есть Адам, у нас есть Адам, у вас есть Адам, и у них есть Адам. Don't forget about the consonant N. In this case, we're using object pronouns to express the location, but the true meaning is something like, by me, there is Adam. By you, there is Adam, and so on. Finally, we have special prepositions in the genitive, like for, without, by, until, near, at, and apart from, and I'm not going to cover all of them, but still, you should always understand that these pronouns are special in the genitive because they always correlate to possession or absence. For instance, the preposition for, which is для, is used in the genitive because the act of expressing possession is present in the preposition itself. Это для меня. Это для тебя. Это для него. Это для нее. Это для нас. Это для вас. And это для них. Don't forget about the consonant N. Just like with possession, the same thing can be done with a preposition like without, which is без. This preposition expresses a form of absence, which is why it is used in the genitive. Адам без меня. Адам без тебя. Адам без него. Адам без нее. Адам без нас. Adam без вас. And Adam без них. Don't forget about the consonant N. This is how special prepositions work in the genitive. They all correlate to possession or absence. Conclusively, this is how impersonal constructions work with object pronouns in the genitive case in Russian. You should always remember that the genitive answers the questions of from what and of from whom. Чего, кого. But in special constructions, these questions can expand. These questions can always be checked in any sentence, which is why it's possible to ask them across every example that I gave. For instance, we can ask, у кого есть собака? By whom is there a dog? Or formally, who has a dog? У меня есть собака. By me, there is a dog. Or formally, I have a dog. The same thing can be done with у кого нет собаки. Кого нет здесь. Я у кого. Это для кого. Адам без кого. By asking these questions and getting the right answers, that's how it's fully possible to understand the genitive as a whole, both with impersonal constructions and object pronouns.